Picture this. It's Friday night. The music's loud, laughter is spilling out of the bar, glasses are clinking. Everyone seems to be easing into that familiar warm buzz, except one person. They're nursing a soda or just water with a twist of lime. No beer, no wine, no cocktail. They smile politely when offered a drink and say, "No thanks, I don't drink." Suddenly the mood shifts, even if just a little. A couple of raised eyebrows, a joking prod. "Come on, just one?" Maybe an awkward silence or a, "Oh, are you sure?" You can almost feel the questions bubbling in everyone's minds. Why wouldn't you drink? What kind of person never touches alcohol? It's easy to label this person. We call them a buzzkill, a party pooper. Maybe we assume they're uptight, or judging us silently from some moral high ground. They must think they're better than us, someone might mutter over their pint. Or the classic, "Oh, you're on the wagon, got a history you're not telling us about?" We cast them as the outsider, the odd one out in our little tribe of toasters and tipsy revelers. But that's a projection. The truth is, someone's choice to never drink isn't a performance or a judgment on you. It's usually a window into a fascinating psychological profile, a mix of motivations, experiences, and traits wired deep in their brain. It's not that they're trying to be difficult or no fun. Often, they've solved a personal equation that many of us haven't. They've figured out that for them, alcohol just doesn't fit. And the reasons why can be surprisingly revealing. Let's break down the psychology of the person who never drinks. Because behind that club soda is a whole story of mind, personality, and life. The drive for control and clarity. For a lot of non-drinkers, it starts with one word: control. Alcohol, by its very nature, loosens control of our thoughts, our behavior, our coordination, you name it. And for some people, that idea isn't enticing. It's terrifying. Psychologists have noted that some individuals are highly over-controlled. They have a strong need to remain composed and in charge of themselves at all times. The thought of getting tipsy and possibly doing something embarrassing or losing their mental sharpness, that's a big nope. It's not that they can't loosen up. It's that losing agency over their actions or secrets, courtesy of a leaky drunk mouth, is the last thing they want. In fact, research has found that lifelong abstainers often score higher on conscientiousness, meaning they tend to be disciplined, responsible, and dutiful. They like to be in control of their decisions. They plan ahead. They might be the friend who checks the movie times, or the coworker who's always 15 minutes early. For such a personality, the unpredictability of alcohol can be especially unappealing. One study even described people who avoid substances as fastidious, unusually attentive to detail and order. It makes sense. If you're meticulous about life, you might also be meticulous about what you put in your body. At the extreme end, this desire for control can tip into anxiety. Some abstainers will admit they're extremely sensitive to any change in their body or mind. A slight dizzy feeling or loss of balance from a drink might set off alarm bells. Imagine feeling your head spin, and instead of thinking, "wee," you think, "oh no, something's wrong." Psychologists Block and Block use the term ego over control to describe people who tightly contain their impulses and emotions. When someone like that lacks a certain resiliency and flexibility, they might avoid alcohol out of a fear of losing control completely. It's like they believe if they let go even for a night, the sky might fall. So, sticking to sobriety becomes a way to feel safe and secure. Now, not everyone who avoids drinking is anxious or over-controlled, not at all, but it's a common thread. They prefer a clear mind. Intoxication feels risky, not liberating. They get their kicks from staying sharp. As one piece of research put it, some abstainers are literally wired to delay gratification and contain impulses more than the average person. They're the ones okay with skipping short-term pleasure, like a drink, if it means avoiding potential long-term regrets, like that hangover or that cringy karaoke incident everyone else is headed for. Personal histories and deep motivations. Sometimes, the decision never to drink comes from a story, a chapter in their life that left a mark. Past trauma is a big one. Think about someone who grew up with an alcoholic parent or witnessed a loved one fall apart due to addiction. To them, alcohol isn't just a harmless social lubricant, it's a loaded gun. If you've seen the dark side of drinking up close, the ugly fights, the tears, the chaos, you might swear it off forever. It's a form of self-protection, a line drawn in the sand. That will never be me. Children of alcoholics, for example, often end up on one of two extremes. Either they're at higher risk of substance issues themselves, or they become very determined abstainers as adults to break the cycle. The fear of turning into dad or mom becomes a powerful motivator. Even a single bad experience can do it. Maybe they tried alcohol once in their teens and it went horribly. A bad reaction, a scary loss of control, or just a really awful night. For some, that's enough to go cold turkey for life. Especially if you're a person who really values self-control. One night of feeling out of control can imprint on your brain. Nope, not doing that again. Our brains are great at linking cause and effect, especially when strong emotions are involved. A terrifying or deeply uncomfortable drunken episode can practically create an aversion, the same way a bout of food poisoning can make you avoid shrimp for years. Then there's the matter of values. Some people don't drink because it clashes with their moral or ethical framework. This could be shaped by religion, culture, or personal philosophy. Maybe they grew up in a faith that teaches abstinence from alcohol, like certain branches of Islam, Christianity, think of Mormons for instance, or straight-edge subcultures, and that value is deeply ingrained. Or perhaps they've embraced a health-conscious lifestyle where alcohol feels like a toxin, which, let's be honest, chemically it kind of is. They might see drinking as self-harm or just unnecessary for a good life. One study from the psychology world noted that abstainers often come off as more conservative or moralistic in general. Not in a preachy, judgmental way necessarily, but in the sense that they have a clear sense of right and wrong for themselves. And they stick to their principles. If their principle is alcohol is off limits, they'll hold that line even if everyone around them is doing the Jaeger bombs. That kind of inner conviction is actually a quiet superpower. It takes a lot of self-assurance to consistently say no in a world that very much wants you to say yes. In fact, data show that the vast majority of people who don't drink are doing it as a free, voluntary choice, not because anyone's forcing them. A 2023 survey found that roughly a third of Americans don't drink at all, and most of those abstainers aren't recovering alcoholics or anything. They just decided that alcohol isn't for them. That blows a big hole in the assumption that if you're not drinking, something must be wrong with you. In reality, for many, it's a proactive wellness decision. Maybe they want to maximize their physical and mental health, or they're training for a sport, or they just feel better without booze. Choosing to stay sober can be as simple as that. A positive choice, rather than the absence of something. Personality, not one size fits all. Personality-wise, what kind of people never drink? It's tempting to picture the abstainer as a certain type, the shy wallflower, the health nut, the perfectionist. And sure, there are patterns, but humans are never that simple. Let's explore a few traits often found in non-drinkers. Conscientiousness. We touched on this, and it bears repeating. High conscientiousness means being organized, cautious, and responsible, and studies have consistently found a link here. Abstainers score higher on these traits than regular or heavy drinkers. They tend to think ahead. If everyone else is saying, YOLO, let's do shots, the conscientious person is the one thinking about tomorrow morning's responsibilities and the probable headache. This can make them seem like the sensible friend in the group. They're often the designated driver, or the one making sure their buddies get home safe. By the way, great friend to have, right? Introversion versus extroversion. This one is interesting. One is, at first glance, you might assume non-drinkers are more introverted. After all, they're not using alcohol to socialize or come out of their shell. Indeed, some research found that people on either extreme Heavy drinkers and total abstainers scored a bit lower on extroversion than moderate drinkers. Think about that. The most outgoing, socially comfortable people were the ones in the middle, who drink a little. Meanwhile, some non-drinkers, like some heavy drinkers, reported feeling less socially at ease. That could mean some abstainers are introverts who simply don't chase the party scene. They might genuinely prefer a movie night or a calm coffee chat over the rowdy bar crawl. If big social gatherings aren't your thing, it's easier to skip the drinking that often accompanies them. However, and this is key, not every non-drinker is introverted. Plenty are extroverts who just don't need a pint in their hand to dance or talk up a storm. They've learned to harness their natural social energy without chemical help, which some might even envy. Neuroticism, emotional stability. Earlier psychological theories painted lifelong abstainers as somewhat anxious or emotionally rigid. Basically, the idea was that they're high in neuroticism, worrying about things going wrong, and thus steering clear of alcohol, which might amplify negative emotions or lead to unpredictable situations. Indeed, if you're prone to anxiety, alcohol's initial relaxation could be tempting, but the loss of control and the next day anxiety, hello, hangxiety, can be brutal. Some non-drinkers might be those who worry enough beforehand that they never even try it. However, here's a twist. More recent studies have challenged the notion that non-drinkers are less emotionally healthy. In fact, researchers found that as a group, people who abstain are no more anxious or depressed than those who drink. Some data even showed abstainers having lower stress and hostility levels compared to moderate drinkers. Surprising, right? One study reported moderate alcohol users actually displayed more signs of paranoia and hostility than non-users. So much for the idea that a glass of wine automatically makes you more zen than the teetotaler. The takeaway: you can't assume someone is wound up or neurotic just because they stay sober. They might actually be quite calm and emotionally secure. Secure enough that they don't feel they need a drink to cope. Openness to experience. This is one of the big 5 personality traits, reflecting how much you crave novelty and variety. Some evidence suggests abstainers score a bit lower on openness. In plain terms, they're less interested in experimenting for the sake of it. If you're low in openness, you're not the type who sees a crazy new cocktail and thinks, "Ooh, let me try." You're more likely to say, "I'll stick with what I know," which in this case is non-alcoholic. These folks might not be drawn to the concept of altering their consciousness for fun. It just doesn't appeal. On the flip side, think of who tends to drink the most. Higher openness can lead to curiosity like, "Sure, I'll try that strange local liquor, why not?" The never drinker often just doesn't have that impulse. They're content with their natural state of mind. Again, this trait can be a strength. Low openness might come with a strong sense of identity and consistency. They're not easily swayed by fads or peer pressure. They know what works for them and they're sticking to it. One caution: when taken to an extreme, some of these traits, high conscientiousness, low openness, etc., can make a person seem inflexible or overly strict. Researchers did observe that some abstainers can become inflexible or intolerant of others' behaviors. We've all probably met someone like this, the person who not only abstains but seems to look down on those who don't. It's like they've taken the teetotaling and wrapped their identity tightly around it. That's where the stereotype of the judgy sober person comes from. It does exist, but it's not the norm. Most non-drinkers just quietly do their thing. If anything, they often go out of their way to not seem judgmental, so they don't make others uncomfortable. They know the stigma that they're the fun police, and many are hyper-aware to avoid confirming it. Family, culture, and faith. The unseen hand. Sometimes, psychology isn't only about what's inside a person, but the water they swim in, their environment, culture, and upbringing. A lot of people never drink simply because that's how they were raised or the norm in their community. No deep neurosis, no dramatic story, it just wasn't a thing in their family or culture. Imagine growing up in a household where nobody drinks. Maybe for religious reasons, say a Muslim family where alcohol is forbidden, or a conservative Christian family who believes in total abstinence. Or perhaps just a health-conscious family that never kept wine or beer in the house. To those kids, booze can feel as foreign as a cigarette or any other adult vice. By the time they reach the age where peers start experimenting, they might have zero curiosity, or it might even feel taboo. The decision to never drink could be almost effortless for them, as normal as not smoking or not doing any other thing that wasn't part of their home culture. On a broader scale, culture plays a huge role. Globally, did you know nearly half of all adults don't drink alcohol at all? In many countries, abstaining is actually more common than drinking. Large swathes of the Middle East and South Asia, for instance, have high rates of lifetime abstainers due to religious and cultural norms. In those places, the non-drinker isn't an oddball at all. They're the majority. Even within Western societies, there are subcultures and communities where not drinking is the expectation. Think of certain indigenous communities with alcohol bans, or straight edge movements in the punk scene that celebrate a sober lifestyle. For someone in those circles, never drinking isn't a psychological quirk. It's a shared value, even a badge of honor. Of course, cultural influence can cut both ways. In cultures where drinking is a rite of passage, college, I'm looking at you, or say countries where pub culture is strong, choosing not to partake is a stronger statement. It might mean the person has a lot of individualism or a strong will to resist norms. There's a bit of a contrarian in every person who flat out rejects something that everyone else is doing. Remember the video we did on people who never join trends? It's a similar vibe. Some folks simply don't like following the herd. If the herd drinks, that might be reason enough for them not to. Not out of spite, but because their mindset is, I make my own choices, period. In psychology, this aligns with a trait called independence, or sometimes even a touch of rebelliousness. Ironically, rebelling by not doing something most people do. They derive a sense of identity and pride from going against the grain. It's like, in a world where everyone is clinking glasses, they stand apart with clear eyes, and there's a quiet power in that. The social tightrope. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Social dynamics. If you're the person at the party who never drinks, you quickly learn that this choice comes with social ripple effects. Good, bad, and ironic. Let's talk about the tightrope the non-drinker often has to walk in social situations. First off, the pressure. It is real. Studies show that friends are the most likely source of pressure to drink. It's friends who say, come on, just one, more than random strangers. In many social circles, drinking together is a bonding ritual. Happy hours, wine nights, keggers, champagne at weddings. Alcohol is woven into how people connect. So when someone opts out, they're disrupting that ritual, even if unintentionally. According to focus groups in one study, drinkers often perceive a non-drinker as a threat to fun. Ouch. Just the mere presence of a sober individual can make drinkers self-conscious. It's what researchers call the sober eye effect. The idea that a sober person is watching and perhaps judging the drunken revelry. Of course, the poor sober person might just be watching in boredom or wishing they weren't stuck babysitting their drunk friends, but the others feel judged even if no judgment is happening. It's a projected fear. If you're not drinking, you must think I'm doing something wrong by drinking. This leads to a bizarre dynamic. Drinkers can get defensive or even antagonistic toward the non-drinker. They might crack jokes like, "What? Our company isn't good enough unless you're stone cold sober." Or, "Live a little, man." In some cases, they might exclude the non-drinker from invites, assuming, oh, they won't have fun with us anyway. This is how social circles sometimes shrink around abstainers. Not because the abstainer is excluding themselves, but because others start to otherize them as not one of us. Psychologists have framed this in terms of in-group versus out-group, the drinking group versus the sober person. Sadly, non-drinkers often report feeling like they're perceived as unsocial or not part of the group by drinkers. It's like there's an invisible wall. The cool kids on one side with their red solo cups, and the teetotaler on the other. Why do drinkers care so much? Well, beyond the fun factor, a non-drinker can also be a threat to connection, as one study put it. People worry it'll be awkward to hang out. How will we bond if you're not drinking with us? It's almost like how someone might feel if one person in a group doesn't speak the same language. They fear the connection won't form. And interestingly, drinkers might also see an abstainer as a threat to self, meaning your choice to stay sober could make me reflect, uncomfortably, on my own drinking habits. If I have a friend who never drinks, I might occasionally wonder, should I cut back? Why do I need a drink to loosen up? That line of thought can be unwelcome. To avoid it, some people unconsciously push the non-drinker away or make them feel wrong for not partaking. It's a defense mechanism, protecting their own ego from self-scrutiny. Let's debunk a big one. Non-drinkers are judgmental. The irony is thick here. In reality, it's often the drinkers who are judging the non-drinkers, projecting criticism where there is none. Sure, some abstainers might quietly judge. Humans are humans after all. But think about it. If they truly were super judgmental of drinkers, would they even be at the bar or party in the first place? Likely not. The fact that they're there suggests they want to socialize and accept their friends as they are. They just don't want the alcohol themselves. One sober individual put it this way: I don't care if you drink, I just prefer to remember our conversation. They're not clutching pearls over your IPA, they're just doing them. Research confirms that drinkers often assume non-drinkers are critiquing them or have a superiority complex, when in fact the non-drinkers are usually just minding their own business. It's a classic projection, as we said. One academic paper even discussed how male non-drinkers get tagged as less masculine by some peers, as if manliness is measured in pints. It's silly, but it shows how not drinking can challenge social stereotypes. A guy at a bar with just a Coke might get weird looks like he's broken some unwritten dude law. Again, that's the group's issue, not his, but he'll feel the heat of it regardless. Now, it's not all doom and gloom socially. Many friend groups are hugely supportive and couldn't care less what's in your glass. Recent research in Finland found that non-drinkers' social experiences were mostly positive, especially in family gatherings, and that people around them were more accepting than we tend to think. Sometimes it just takes one person to set the tone. A friend who says, "Cool, more wine for us," and moves on, treating it like no big deal. Then everyone relaxes. In more mature or close-knit circles, it often becomes a non-issue over time. Your friends know, oh, that's just Jenna, she doesn't drink, and they love you anyway. Maybe they love you more for always being the reliable driver, or the one who can recap the wild night accurately. Plus, being a non-drinker can attract a certain kind of friend who respects that independence. You might become a magnet for others who feel a bit tired of the drinking scene and see you as a breath of fresh air. You show that it's possible to have fun, be social, and not need alcohol as a crutch. In that way, non-drinkers can inadvertently become leaders in their social circle, setting an example that you can be true to yourself even if it's against the norm. That's pretty inspiring if you think about it. The boring, the saintly, and the secret drunk. Stereotypes and misconceptions. Let's address the caricatures often painted of people who never drink, because these are strong in the popular imagination. They're boring. Ah, yes, the old buzzkill image. If someone's not taking shots or getting loose, they must be a stick in the mud, right? This is one of the biggest misconceptions. Fun fact, a person doesn't chemically require ethanol to dance on a table or tell outrageous jokes. Who knew? Some of the most interesting, lively people you'll meet might be lifelong sober. They've developed social skills and humor that don't rely on a drink in hand. In fact, some abstainers try extra hard to participate and be engaging precisely because they don't want anyone thinking they're bored or boring. They'll hit the dance floor, laugh loud, even egg their friends on in drinking games, while sipping Red Bull, all to show, hey, I'm here for the good time, I just don't need the beer for it. On the flip side, sure, a person who naturally doesn't enjoy rowdy environments might both not drink and be quieter at parties. But correlation is not causation. They're not quiet because they're sober. They're sober because they're quiet, and perhaps don't enjoy those kinds of parties. And guess what? That's okay. Not everyone at a social event has to be the life of the party. Sometimes it's nice to have a great listener in the group, or someone who will remember the hilarious thing you said and remind you later. They're judging me. We've discussed this, but to reiterate, unless proven otherwise, assume the non-drinker is cool with you doing you. If they say, I don't mind, go ahead. Take it at face value. Many non-drinkers have zero interest in preaching. They often hate the assumption that they're holier than thou. As one article pointed out, people often presume abstainers are either recovering alcoholics or self-righteous critics. That puts abstainers in a defensive spot. No, I'm not secretly an addict. And no, I don't care that you're drinking wine. It can be exhausting for them to constantly navigate these projections. So maybe, as drinkers, we should cut them some slack and not immediately demand an explanation for their choice. If someone doesn't want cake, we don't interrogate them, right? We should treat alcohol the same way. It's just a preference. They're repressed or missing out on the joys of life. This one is a bit philosophical. There's an assumption that a life without alcohol is inherently less joyful, less full. Sure, they might miss out on a certain flavor of social wildness or the particular euphoria of a tipsy night singing karaoke. But they also miss out on the downsides, hangovers, drunk mistakes, the health risks, and they find joy in other ways. Humans are amazingly adaptive. If you take alcohol off the table, people find plenty of alternative routes to fun and relaxation. Maybe they develop hobbies that give them natural highs. Adventure sports, exercise, art, music, meditation, you name it. Or they enjoy socializing in settings that don't revolve around drinking, like daytime activities or creative meetups. They might have more money in their pocket, alcohol's expensive, and fewer regrets clouding their memories. They might even have a kind of quiet confidence knowing that all their good times are 100% authentically experienced, not booze-fueled. That can be a deeply satisfying way to live. It's not repression, it's a conscious trade-off. They sacrifice the short-term kick of intoxication for the steady, reliable glow of clarity. Different strokes for different folks. There's also a funny flip side stereotype. Sometimes people think non-drinkers are secret drinkers. Like, nobody could truly never want alcohol, so maybe they sneak a glass at home. This usually says more about the skeptic than the sober person. It can be hard for those of us who do drink to imagine not wanting to, because alcohol is such a fixture in many of our lives. But believe it or not, a lot of abstainers genuinely have no desire for it. It's not a struggle for them. They're not secretly craving it while sadly sipping water. They genuinely are indifferent or even repulsed by alcohol. This is especially true if they've made it well into adulthood without drinking. By then, it's clear they don't need the stuff to enjoy life. Many will tell you they don't even think about it until someone makes it an issue. It's kind of like how someone who's vegan might feel when people ask, "Don't you miss bacon?" If they've been vegan for years, chances are bacon isn't even on their mind until you brought it up. Same with the lifelong non-drinker and alcohol. Inner motives, values versus image. One fascinating angle is the inner motivation behind abstinence. Psychologists often distinguish between intrinsic motivation, doing something because it aligns with your values or brings you personal satisfaction, and extrinsic motivation, doing something because of external pressures or to gain approval, avoid disapproval. This applies to non-drinkers too. The happiest non-drinkers you'll meet tend to be those with intrinsic motivation. They genuinely don't want to drink for themselves. Maybe they value health, mental clarity, or they simply don't enjoy the taste or effects. It's a choice that resonates with their identity and goals. These people often have an easier time sticking to it and feel little temptation. It's just who they are. When you ask them why they don't drink, they might say, "I just don't need it," or "I've never been interested, I'm good with my iced tea." There's a calm confidence to it. They typically aren't trying to prove anything to anyone. If anything, they sometimes forget that their choice is even a big deal until someone else makes it a thing. On the other hand, consider someone who's not drinking due to extrinsic reasons. Perhaps their family or spouse disapproves of alcohol, so they abstain to stay in good standing. Or maybe it's for a job. Think of a public figure or a coach who wants to set an example. Or their doctor scared them into quitting drinking for health reasons, so now they're off it but not entirely by choice. These individuals might feel a bit more conflicted. Part of them might actually want to join the gang for a beer, but they resist because of the external rule or image they want to uphold. This can create some inner tension. They might get a stronger case of FOMO, fear of missing out, or might occasionally fall off the wagon, because the motivation isn't coming from within. Interestingly, some people start as extrinsically motivated abstainers and become intrinsically motivated over time. For example, someone might initially quit drinking to support a partner in recovery or because their religion expects it, but then after living sober for a while, they personally come to appreciate how they feel and make it their own choice. They internalize the value. That's the sweet spot, when an external reason transforms into genuine personal conviction. What about those who abstain to appear a certain way? Say, to seem more virtuous or to distinguish themselves. This can happen too. In certain social groups, not drinking can actually be seen as cool or enlightened. Think of wellness circles or some Silicon Valley types boasting about being sober curious or doing dopamine fasts. If someone's doing it mainly to brand themselves, that's extrinsic motivation. It might not last if the social winds change. The bottom line is, a person's relationship with alcohol, or lack thereof, is most sustainable when it aligns with their authentic self. If it's internally driven, it tends to stick and cause less psychic strain. If it's externally driven, it can be a rockier road. So if you meet a non-drinker, know that there's likely a personal story or value system behind it, something meaningful to them fueling that choice. And if you are a non-drinker yourself, it might be worth reflecting. Am I doing this for me? Or for someone? Something else? That insight can be powerful. Life on the other side of the line. How does never drinking affect one's life in practical terms? There are some real impacts on relationships and lifestyle, both positive and challenging. Friendships and social life. We've covered the potential awkwardness, but there are upsides too. For one, you're a great asset in any friend group, the reliable one. People might initially hassle you about not drinking, but they also secretly or openly appreciate that you're the one who can drive them home at 2 a.m., or the one who will look out for them when they've had one too many. That can deepen trust. Over time, close friends usually just accept it, and it becomes a non-issue. In fact, it can become a defining lovable trait. "Oh, that's Tom. He's always sober and taking care of us goofballs." If your friends truly respect you, they won't push it after a while. And if they do, well, maybe evaluate if those are the friends you want, because it's about respecting personal choices. Non-drinkers often form connections in other ways. They might be the ones actually engaging in deeper conversation at the party while the drinkers' talk gets progressively slurred and silly. They often remember people they meet and details from conversations, which can make others feel seen and appreciated. Paradoxically, while they might not be part of the drunken bonding, they can bond with people in a more clear-eyed way. I've heard someone say, "I love having my one sober friend at gatherings. We have the best talks, and they actually remember it the next day to continue the friendship." However, a non-drinker may also curate their social life to avoid discomfort. Some choose not to go to bars at all, or leave early when things get rowdy. They might prefer meeting friends one-on-one or doing activities where alcohol isn't the main event. Hiking, cooking together, gaming, etc. This can actually lead to a richer variety of social experiences. They push their friend group to think outside the bar. Let's do an escape room, or hit the new ice cream parlor, or have a board game night. Everyone ends up having fun, and no one has a hangover after. Win-win. Romantic relationships. Dating can be a funny arena. We live in a time when a lot of first dates revolve around grabbing a drink. So a teetotaler in the dating scene might have to navigate that. Some put it right on their dating profile to avoid surprises. I don't drink, but totally cool if you do. That upfront honesty can filter out people who would have an issue with it. It can also spark interesting conversations. Some potential partners might be curious. What made you decide that? If they're open-minded, it's actually a great way to get to know each other's values early on. If they react negatively or think it's weird, hey, better to know now than later. In relationships where one partner drinks and the other never does, it's all about mutual respect. It can actually balance out. The non-drinker partner can be a stabilizing force, while the drinker partner might help the other loosen up in spirit. Without alcohol. As long as there's no judgment either way, many couples make it work perfectly. On the other hand, if one person loves partying hard every weekend and the other is firmly sober and hates that scene, there could be a lifestyle clash. They might drift apart due to just different ideas of fun. Again, it comes down to compatibility and respect. Plenty of people who drink moderately have no issue with a partner who abstains. Some even prefer it, seeing it as a positive influence. Family and kids. Interestingly, someone who never drinks might have a particular perspective on raising kids around alcohol. If they abstained because of a family trauma, they might be very protective, ensuring their own kids don't go through that. If it was a personal health choice, they might educate their kids early on about the downsides of drinking. They may keep an alcohol-free household, which can shape the next generation's attitudes. Or if they do allow alcohol at home, say their spouse drinks occasionally, they'll likely model a very balanced approach. In any case, the children of a non-drinker will see that not drinking is an option, something many of us didn't even realize when we were young because we saw all adults around us drinking. That can be powerful modeling, showing kids that you don't have to drink to be a grown-up or to enjoy life, health and wellness. We should mention the obvious perks. Someone who never drinks avoids all alcohol-related health risks, liver damage, certain cancers, addiction, etc. They also save themselves a lot of empty calories and maybe have an easier time maintaining their weight or fitness. Now, moderate drinking has often been romanticized as heart healthy, the whole red wine thing. But recent large analyses in the World Health Organization have made it clear that no amount of alcohol is truly safe for health. So our teetotaler is, if anything, at a health advantage. They're proof that you can relax or celebrate without a chemical assist. Many report sleeping better and feeling more energetic by not messing with their neurochemistry via alcohol. This doesn't mean life without alcohol is automatically happy and problem-free. You can be sober and still be unhealthy or unhappy for other reasons, but it removes one significant risk factor from the equation. Rethinking the non-drinker. By now, we can see that people who never drink alcohol are not a monolith. There are so many paths that lead someone to that identity. It could be fear or principle or simply preference. It could be shaped by trauma or by a supportive upbringing. It could reflect a very cautious personality or a wildly independent spirit. Often, it's a mosaic of several of these factors coming together. One thing they usually do have in common, a certain kind of strength. Think about how much social pressure exists around drinking. It's in our media, our holidays, our peer interactions. To consistently say, "No thanks, I'm good," in the face of that takes resolve. It's a quiet rebellion. Whether they realize it or not, non-drinkers every day are pushing back against the notion that you need alcohol to have fun, to fit in, to cope with stress, to celebrate achievements, or to drown sorrows. They're living proof that life can be full of laughter, adventure, deep connections, relaxation, without that bottle or glass. And maybe that's the most interesting psychological aspect of all. The mindset of nonconformity and self-assurance. In a world where the norm is to join the toast, the person who raises a glass of water instead is saying, "I'm comfortable being me, even if it's different." That is powerful. It challenges the rest of us to examine why we might feel uncomfortable around them. Is it because we wish we had that level of self-determination in some area of our life? Because perhaps we drink partly to meet expectations and would love to opt out sometimes? These are uncomfortable questions that a non-drinker's presence can stir up. And society's initial response is often to push those questions away and just label the person as weird. But if we sit with it, we might learn something about ourselves. So the next time you're at a party and you notice someone not drinking, resist the quick judgment. Instead, maybe strike up a genuine conversation, not about why they're not drinking unless they offer. Talk about anything. You might find they're just as interesting, fun, and complex as anyone else there. Perhaps even more so, because they've likely thought deeply about this choice they're making. They've had to swim upstream in ways that build character and insight. Challenge your assumptions. The abstainer isn't necessarily an addict in recovery. Statistically, most aren't. They're not necessarily a buzzkill. They might be leading the conga line by midnight. Who knows? They're not automatically judging you. They might actually be one of the most empathetic, non-judgmental people in the room, precisely because they know what it's like to be judged. And they're certainly not living a half-life. Many are out there thriving, full of passion and joy, proving that alcohol is optional. In the end, the psychology of people who never drink alcohol teaches us about authenticity. It's about having the clarity to know what you want or don't want in your life, and the courage to stand by it. It's about finding alternative ways to deal with life's ups and downs. It's about the strength to sometimes be the only one doing something or not doing something and being at peace with that. So here's a toast, with whatever's in your glass, be it whiskey or water, to the non-drinkers, the misjudged, the resilient, the ones quietly reminding us that fun and fulfillment come in many flavors. May we understand them better, and maybe even learn a bit from their example. Are you or someone you know a non-drinker? What's your take on this psychology? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind, and you're thirsty for more, pun intended, consider subscribing and join us next time as we explore another fascinating facet of human behavior. Cheers to choice, to understanding, and to living life on your own terms.